Good morning and welcome to the October edition of The Spotlight, where we turn the spotlight on the arts. I'm Kevin Perry, your host for the show, and it is our privilege and pleasure to bring to you the idea of marching band. But before we meet our guest this morning, let me give you just a few dates that you want to write down so that you can continue to support all of our wonderful music students. On October 16th at 7 o'clock, the LPA Concert and Wind Ensemble will have their annual fall concert. That's October 16th at LPA. The Crown Jewel Marching Festival that will feature many of our bands will be in Vero Beach on October 18th. And then our marching performance assessments will be on October the 25th. And finally, we will end the month of October with our annual giving concert that features all of our choruses, middle school and high school at Lincoln Park Academy, October the 29th at 7 o'clock. The giving concert is a very special concert because all we ask is for our guests to bring a non-perishable item, and we will donate it to the food banks here in St. Lucie County to help our residents. So all of the items that's collected that evening will go to support our own families here in St. Lucie County. But again, I welcome you to the Spotlight, where we're turning the spotlight on marching bands. And I have with me three awesome band directors from St. Lucie County, starting with our brand new band director at St. Lucie West Centennial High School, Miss Emily Foreman.
Good morning.
Mr. Lee Walker from Westwood High School.
Good morning.
And Mr. John McGallagher, our senior member on the panel, who's going to make sure we all stay in line, the awesome band director at Port St. Lucie High School. Good morning, all. Welcome to the show.
Sir. Good morning.
Now, we have new people, and we have some people that have been in the system for almost as long as I have been, maybe just a tad longer. But introduce yourself, Ms. Foreman. Tell us a little bit about you, where you went to school, that kind of thing, your primary.
My name is Emily Foreman. I'm a rare Tallahassee native. I actually was born and raised there. I went to Florida State University.
Florida State.
Oh, yeah. My primary instrument is the trumpet.
Okay, Mr. Walker.
All right, my name is Lee Brian Walker. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I graduated from the great Bethune-Cookman University.
Let's go Wildcats.
Let's go Wildcats. My primary instrument is a trombone.
Mr. Mack.
I'm John McGallagher. I've been in the system for 44 years. My primary instrument is tuba, and I'm a transplant from South Mississippi.
And your favorite school is
and
what?
My favorite school is University of Alabama.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Roll Tide.
Could we have a little bit more enthusiasm?
Roll Tide. Roll Tide. Okay, there we go. Okay. Now, Ms. Foreman, I understand that this is your very first year teaching.
It is.
Okay, and you're starting right here in fabulous St. Lucie County with us. Great place to start. Now, Mr. Walker, this is your 5th year?
6th year.
Your 6th year teaching, but your first year in St. Lucie County.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Mack, this is your 44th year, and 26 of those years have been here in St. Lucie
Yes,
County.
sir,
Did I get all of that right?
Every bit of it.
Okay, all right. Now, I know that you all are strong advocates about music, passionate about music. Tell me, what is it that drives you to be so passionate about the world of music? And just jump in.
Kids, the kids. That's what drives me.
What are you finding with those kids and how they're performing, Mr. Mack?
You know, they have the same struggles that kids have always had with making things happen, but they want to do well, and they work very hard at that. Kids is what drives me.
Anybody else want to jump in?
I would like to agree. I've realized that music can be a healer for kids. It could be a guider as well. And some kids may use music to carry them from one place to the next place. So music can do a lot for a child.
Ms. Foreman, I know you're not going to be outdone, so you might as well jump in.
Well, I feel as though music can be like an escape for these kids. Some of these kids are coming from, you know, maybe they can come from any area. They can be someone who maybe struggles academically, someone who's exceeding academically, but all of them can come together at a certain level musically. And some of those kids who may be struggling in math or reading or something like that excel at this musical idea, and it brings them to school, and it gets them to classes, and increases the school's full-time enrollment. It's just a great draw and joy for those students, and to be able to facilitate that for them is a blast.
Well, let's jump to that idea. You said it brings them to school, helps their attendance, helps their enrollment. What is it, do you think, is about, and I'll say the arts, music, art, dance, drama, band, choir, that makes students want to come to school?
I think it's the enjoyment level that they get. They're not constantly under pressure, taking tests, things of that nature. They're always under pressure for performance, but the performance becomes the fun aspect. And they're learning a tremendous work ethic, and they realize this. If we put ourselves into this, then this is going to be the results over on the other side.
I believe that the arts give the kids the opportunity to express themselves. How often can they express themselves through schools? That's through the arts, musically, whether it's vocally or instrumentally, or through dance or just art.
I would say I agree with what he's saying about it, that it provides for them a chance to be involved in something that's considered to be subjective. There's not a textbook way to do any of it. And so it gives them the freedom to sort of do what they will, and they're forced into a social situation with all these peers of all different age levels. I know personally at Centennial we have certain learning academies like for 9th grade and 10th grade, and they really stick to their grade level. But music is a broad spectrum. I mean, it's from 9 through 12, and they get to be with all these other kids and get to be themselves all the time. So that's super cool.
When did you first fall in love with music?
Oh, from a very young age. My parents were both musically involved, and so I was exposed to a lot of classical music as a child, and I just grew up with it. They put me in a piano class at 3, and so it's just been with me for a long time.
Mr. Walker?
My first experience, which made me fall in love with music, was at the Magic City Classic Parade in Birmingham, Alabama, and watching my brother march up the street, and he was my role model, has always been. And from that point, I noticed that different bands provided different sounds, and I was intrigued by that at a young age, and it made me just fall in love with music.
Mr. Mack?
I decided as a 5th grader that I was going to become a band director, and I never deviated. Standing on the street in a little seafood town in South Alabama, Bayou La Battery, Alabama. That's where Bubba came from in Forrest Gump. Mm-hmm. I remember watching the band go by standing in front of the theater, and the young lady that was head majorette happened to be my oldest brother's girlfriend. And I still remember how pretty she was. I think that's what drew me, perhaps.
Pretty girl, up front, okay.
I think God called me to be a band director, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Now, I heard Ms. Foreman say your primary is trumpet. Mm-hmm. Mr. Walker, your primary is trombone. Mr. Mack, your primary is tuba. My primary is French horn. We got all brass players sitting on the panel.
We have our own quartet.
Yes, we do. As a performer, as a musician, as an educator, what is it that fuels you, that drives you to continue to go time after time after time? We hear so much about budget cuts. We hear so much about testing. We hear so much about standards. We hear so much. But what is it that still fuels you or drives you to be so passionate about teaching music and providing musical opportunities for children?
If I may say, I know what music and band did for me. It was a lifesaver. Had I not had it, I could have possibly been somewhere else, not as successful. My band director helped guide me to where I am. I used those techniques, those discipline strategies to help guide me through college. And I feel like kids today need that same guidance. So if I was afforded that opportunity, I want to do the same for the young kids as well.
Mr. Mack, here's a question for you. Mm-hmm. After 44 years, how would you describe those years as being a band director?
Living a dream, which very few people get to do. I have an associate that I work with occasionally that he and I talk about the fact that we are living a dream. And that dream's always been fueled just simply by giving back to the kids, helping the kids, watching the kids grow. The hard work is getting the performance ready. The fun time is performing. That sense of watching the lights, the lights go off when they get something. In theory class the other day, I could see immediately one of the students got a concept about intervals that we were working on, and it just kind of clicked, and his whole countenance changed, and I looked at him and said, "You got that, didn't you?" He said, "Yes, sir, I finally got it." And that's the thing that drives you. I use this example. I'm a very poor golfer, but I always enjoyed walking around the golf course. And I didn't have to hit but one good shot. And I was ready to go back the next time when it came time. And that's the way I've always felt about students. If you can get one student to get the concept or see one student improve, that's where the fueling comes to continue.
Ms. Bowman, here's a question for you. Brand new band director, first day. Describe what it was like your first day as a teacher.
Oh, my very first day as a teacher. The word I've been frequently using this year is overwhelming. It's a lot of information at one time from many different directions. And so I found myself using, you were talking just now about the specific things about music that keep us there, using those escapes, that musical escape. Okay, well, this is what I love. This is what I'm here for. This is what the kids are here for. This is joyful. This is fun. And so that kept me going for that first day, and I think kept the kids going, and the energy level stayed high, and we got a lot of very productive things done that day. So I felt that it was very successful, but definitely overwhelming.
Great, great. Now, today we're focusing on marching bands and this idea of marching bands. All of these wonderful teachers are performers in their own right. They're musicians in their own right, and they have to go from what we call from season to season with different kinds of bands. But oftentimes we start our year with this idea of marching band. So somebody tell me, what is a marching band?
A moving, performing ensemble, essentially coordinating what had been military-style marching and also implementing the performance aspect with the instruments. So it takes aspects of both and combines them together and makes it into a full performance.
You know, as I was doing some research for the show, I realized that one of my favorite institutions, the University of Illinois, where I got my master's degree from, actually was the Fighting Illini. I actually did the first halftime show in 1907. So when we look at this idea of marching bands, some people call them football bands, some people call them parade bands, this idea of being on the field. What is your show like this year, and what is your show called? What's the concept? Emily, you want to start?
Sure. My show is a Danny Elfman show.
And who is Danny Elfman?
He is a film composer who writes for a lot of, like, he wrote for the Tim Burton movies, things like that. So it takes different medleys or pieces of music that he's written and combines them into individual songs. It's 3 parts, so there's a first movement, a second movement, and a third movement, each of which has multiple songs in it. But the kids then, play that music. It's themed around that composer, so it's just his stuff.
And Mr. Walker?
Well, this year we're doing Earth, Wind, and Fire theme. Earth, Wind, and Fire is a really great band from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. And they have done a lot of music, and a lot of artists today sample from them. So this year we're exposing Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Now, Mr. McGallagher, this is your 44th year. Is there something special about this year?
I'm retiring this year, if that's what you're referring to.
I am so what have you decided to make your marching band show themed around?
This year we're doing MJ in retrospect, Michael Jackson in retrospect. We went back and picked up his earlier years before he became an individual performer. We're doing some things centered around the Jackson 5, and then some music that's early in his personal career, and then we're ending the show tagging in some of his more recent tunes.
Let me do this. Michael Jackson, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Danny Elfman. For our viewing audience, tell us some of the music that we might hear in your show, Mr. Mack.
Okay, our first movement is A Little Bitty Pretty One, I Want You Back, and ABC, which came out of the Jackson 5 era, but Michael carried that into his individual performance career the first several years. His first 2 or 3 tours, he used those songs as part of his show. Then we're doing Never Can Say Goodbye. We're doing Dance Machine, And we're closing out with a tag of Billie Jean, Thriller, and Bad.
So I won't get to hear My Way? Oh, that's not Michael Jackson, right?
That's not Michael Jackson.
Okay.
He could have done that, but he chose not to.
Yeah. Mr. Walker, Earth, Wind, and Fire, what will we hear?
Well, our opener is In the Stone, and our second number is Fantasy. Our third number will be September and Boogie Wonderland.
Okay. And Ms. Bowman?
So our first movement is the theme from the Spider-Man films, and also the theme from Tales from the Crypt. The second movement is a medley of different songs from the film Nightmare Before Christmas. And then the final movement is the theme Ice Dance from the film Edward Scissorhands, and then the main theme from the movie Beetlejuice.
Okay. When we look at marching bands, we know that marching bands, there was traditional marching band where it was the high step. But now our bands have adapted more of DCI, Drum Corps International, glide step movement. Can somebody talk to me about what is the difference in what we may see from a traditional band to what we normally see with our high school bands, DCI kind of drum corps bands?
Traditional bands generally move yard line to yard line, some sideline to sideline work. Texas A&M is more of a traditional band with the ROTC influence there. When drum corps came along and really started influencing band in the early 70s, we began to move more sideline backfield, we called it, where we were actually performing to the audience rather than performing up and down the field. The Cassavant style of marching is it was more of a kaleidoscope type marching where we did step 2 work, and I would go 2, Mr. Walker would go 4, Ms. Pullman would go 6, you would go 8. We'd stand and wait till we finished that, then we may pick it up, reverse it, and it became just a kaleidoscope. Drum corps started becoming what we call more curvier designs versus linear, and that changed the whole format of the show. There was a time when bands didn't do anything but a theme show. They might do a showboat and create what looked like a steamboat, move it down the field while they're playing Old Man River. Well, that faded out, I think, pretty quickly because of sizes of bands. If you look at Ohio State and what they do with their animated work, that can't be done if you don't have an extremely large number of students. So these things came and went somewhat relative to because of the size of the programs and that kind of thing.
Let's talk about sizes of programs, because I know your program size is very different. Ms. Pullman, how many students do you have in your marching band?
87.
Is that winds and percussions?
That's winds and percussion.
Does that include sideline?
Sideline,
Okay.
yes, it does.
Okay. Mr. Walker?
We have approximately 40.
Okay. And Mr. Mack?
I have about 75.
But some of our larger, if I may use that word, bands in the area have up to about 150.
Yes.
So when you look at the size, how do you work with size?
Well, my approach has always been marching is marching. It doesn't matter about the size. I can't spread my band as far as a 150-piece band. So I've got to learn to work within the confines of what I can do. And once I decide, okay, I've got this many students, then I determine, okay, what is my field coverage going to be? And that's what I stay within for the sake of sound and sake of just good visual aesthetics on the field.
I can't believe our time is almost out. Mr. Mack, I'm going to stay with you for just 1 second. I know a couple of years ago you did a show called Quidam, and it was from the music from Cirque du Soleil. Tell us a little bit about what led you to that and what that show was all about.
My drum major and I were I was looking for a theme, and my drum major came and said, "Mr. Mack, have you heard this?" And I said, "No, I don't particularly like that music. He said, but you're going to like this. And he was right, I did. So I listened to the charts, and the 3 songs, which I can't remember the names of them, but they fit marching band very well in the arranging aspect. And then I took on the approach that particular year that I wanted to do a more traditional style show. And we did a lot of line work, a lot of block work, those kinds of things. We still incorporated some of the more modern things. But we took on the aspect of trying to generate a show on the field all the way to a tremendously large backdrop that we created and had one of our students outside the band to paint and so forth. And a former student at the school built this backdrop. This thing was like 15 feet long, and when you extended it, it went up, it was approximately 12 feet off the ground. And that was the final thing that was behind our show the whole time that we did this. And then you sit down and you listen to the music and you say, okay, what kind of movement is going to fit this? You know, if it's slow movement, we're going to do perhaps one thing. If it's fast, we're going to do something else. All of this dictates what you can do. And you have to start just piecing it together.
Okay, I'm going to hasten to move us along, but I need to get 3 more questions asked. So, Miss Foreman, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about band camp. Mr. Walker, I'm going to ask you to tell us what are your goals for your band this year. And Mr. Mack, I'm going to ask you to talk about putting formations on the field. So, Ms. Walker, Ms. Foreman, briefly tell us about how band camp is and this idea of band camp.
The idea of band camp, typically what directors will do is it'll either be a 1-week or a 2-week process. The initial week is usually used for incoming members, for people who have not done marching before, to teach them the sort of fundamental technique that they'll need to know for the remainder of the year, to learn, you know, where does my foot go on B1, how am I supposed to stand, where does my instrument go? All this stuff is coordinated between every single student, and there's a specific way for every instrument to do those things. And so that initial week is for usually some of the veterans or the leadership individuals. You appoint people on leadership to help guide these individuals, and they all come in and they'll work with these younger students who haven't learned these basics yet and get them started. And then the second week is used to combine every member of the band, and so the entire band is in there. They're all refreshing their fundamental technique. And what you try to do in the second week is to put part of your first parts of drill on the field so that the younger members see what that's like.
Talking about putting formations and drills on the field, Mr. Mack, how does that happen?
Well, you have your charts, which are divided into sets, and each student is given a specific coordinate. It's much more advanced now than it used to be, and they have their coordinate sheet, and they actually it's actually laid out on the football field as if it was a large grid, and they find their initial spot, and then from that point, we just start laying one set on top of the other set until we have actually completed the entire first movement or first song, and then we just progress from there. It's very individualized now. I know I used to teach every student everything, but my shows were side A and side B did exactly the same thing. So I'm over here teaching side A, side B's watching, and then I teach side B, side A's. You know, it's that kind of work. Now, I think it's much better because students get more involved and they have much more ownership into what they're actually doing. They're actually finding their spots, creating the drill from the standpoint of what has been put on the paper.
Mr. Walker, goals for band for this year?
Goals for band is to introduce students to various broad spectrum of styles of music, different artists, different composers, to give them the performance experience, and to also give them the opportunity to perform and hopefully get superior ratings at competition. That's what we're shooting for.
Here we go. Quickly, because time is almost over. I can't believe I've had this much fun and I'm having to talk so fast. But if you could do one show in your span as a band director, one marching band show, what would it be? If you could do one show, put it on the field, I know that's a tough one
It's a tough one.
for musicians.
I'd be interested in doing a show of Johann de Meij's Lord of the Rings Symphony, which is this epic work, lots of movements, very difficult, but it translates well into a marching setting, and I think it could be a really cool show.
Okay. Mr. Walker?
I think I would be interested in, Stevie Wonder is my favorite, doing a lot of Stevie Wonder, some of his greatest hits.
Mr. Matt?
Frank Sinatra show.
And what would we close with?
We close with My Way.
My Way. Here's my final question. As we're educators and we're trying to make sure that we continue this idea of music going on, briefly tell me, if you had an opportunity to speak to a parent, to entice them, to ensure that their child participated in music or the arts, what would you say to that parent in 30 seconds or less?
The musical experience, specifically in a high school setting, is one that is unforgettable and unmatched in quality and excitement, and your child will learn all kinds of social things that they can apply to their future, about time management and being in a group and what that means, that they learn applicable information to their future in there as well as the musical content.
Mr. Walker?
If music is taken serious, it can be used as a bridge, a financial bridge for college, support system.
Mr. Mack?
That's really a hard question in 30 seconds, but I think what I would say is that music prepares students for life no matter what they choose to do. Music prepares students for life.
Well, that's it for this edition of the Spotlight. I want to thank my awesome guests. And on Friday night, can we see your band perform this Friday night?
Yes, you can.
And where would that game be?
That's going to be South County Stadium, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Mr. Walker, this week, can we see your band perform?
Yes, Thursday at Longwood Stadium.
Thursday at Longwood Stadium. And Mr. Matt?
Now, we do not have a game this week, but folks can come out, see the band rehearsal on Friday night at Port St. Lucie High. We'll be on the field rehearsing, and we'll do a complete run-through at the final, the rehearsal somewhere around 8 o'clock or so.
And just a reminder to our viewing guests, on October the 16th at 7 o'clock at Lincoln Park Academy, that's the fall concert for their bands there. On October the 18th, it's the Crown Jewel Marching Festival. It starts at 8 o'clock that morning at Vero Beach, and some of our bands will be performing there as well. On October the 25th is MPAs for our band, and that's located
Jensen Beach
at Jensen Beach High School, and we start at
generally around 3 o'clock.
about approximately 3 o'clock. And then the giving concert that we want to invite everyone out to come hear the awesome work of many of our chorus students will be on October 29th at Lincoln Park Academy. We want to thank the awesome executive producer of the Spotlight, Mr. Craig Jerome, our camera crew, and our help here, Sharon Perkins and Debbie McAnally, for making sure that we continue to do our best to turn the spotlight on the arts here on the Spotlight. Thank you, and we'll see you next month.